إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So today then we begin the new book, the book which is the explanation of Nawaqid al-Islam. And this book, it is about the nullifiers of Islam. What are the types of actions that a person may do, and if he did them, it would nullify his Islam. This particular book, Nawaqid al-Islam, it is written by Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala, and the explanation we'll be using is a mixture between the explanation of Shaykh al-Fawzan and various benefits from other explanations like that of Shaykh Muhammad Bazmul and a couple of others also now and again. So here in the introduction it mentions رسالة نواقض الإسلام للإمام المجدد محمد بن عبد الوهاب رحمه الله موضوعها ذكر الأمور التي ينتقض بها الإسلام ممن يدعيه. This particular book, it mentions the issues that would nullify the Islam of a person. فهي تتعلق بمسألة. So therefore this particular book is over a particular issue. تعيين الأمور التي تخرج المسلم من الإسلام. The types of things, actions, deeds, if you were to perform them, then that would exit you from Islam. ذلك أن النواقض جمع ناقض. And this book, it is entitled Nawaqid al-Islam, and that from its very root means the nullification of something or something becoming void. You hear this phrase in various different contexts. For example, in the books of fiqh, you hear the scholar saying the nawaqid of al-wudu, and that is the nullifiers of wudu. And you hear this title also being mentioned in other ahadith and other narrations. And so the purpose of this title is to indicate to a person those affairs that would nullify your Islam and exit you from the fold of Islam. In this particular book, the author mentions 10 of them. 10 particular actions, 10 particular deeds. If you were to fall into them, then these 10, any of them would mean that they nullify your Islam. فقيل, the reason why these 10 that we're going to come across have been mentioned in particular is لكون هذه العشرة ترجع إليها جميع النواقض. That all of the different types of actions that would nullify your Islam, and there are many different types, they all return back to these 10. So these 10 are like the heads. These are the 10 main things, the 10 main actions that would exit a person from the fold of Islam. And all of the others, they are subcategories under these 10. Some of the scholars have also mentioned that maybe these 10 which are mentioned in the book were specifically mentioned because these 10 are absolutely definitive. There are clear evidences upon these 10 that they exit you from Islam if you do them. Some of the others, the evidences may not be as definitive, There may be evidences here and there, but these 10 where the evidences are absolutely clear-cut. The one who performs these actions has nullified his Islam. It appears that Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned these 10 we're going to go through because of the severity of these 10. As you're going to come across and see, these 10 are from the most dangerous of the actions a Muslim can fall into. So it is very important to study this type of topic. It is very important to study this type of topic. And that is, or there is an example from one of the companions, Hudayfa radiyallahu anhu, he said, كان الناس يسألون النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الخير وكنت أسأله عن الشر مخافة أن أقع فيه أو مخافة أن يدركني. He said the people used to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the good things. What are the good deeds that we can do? But he said, I used to ask him about the evil things. Why? Everybody else was asking about the good deeds. What are the good deeds we can do to get to paradise, etc. He said, but I used to ask about the evil deeds. Why? مَخَافَةً أَنْ أَقَعَ فِيهِ أو مخافة أن يدركني. He said, because I was afraid that I may unknowingly fall into those evils. Because how can you stop yourself falling into an evil if you do not know what the evils are? How can you stop yourself from doing haram if you don't know what the haram things are? You may end up doing something thinking it's okay, not knowing it's haram. That's why they say, كيف يتقي من لا يعرف ما يتقي. How can somebody protect himself from something if you don't know what you're supposed to be protecting yourself from? You can only protect yourself from something if you know what it is you're supposed to be protecting yourself from. Like in a forest. You go to a forest and there are certain berries that are poisonous for humans. How are you going to know which berries from the trees not to eat? You're only going to know that if you learn where they are and what color they are and what they look like. So you learn about those bad berries in order to make sure you stay away from them. To make sure that you can avoid them. Without knowing which color they are, what size they are, what they look like, you may go find some berries, they look nice and eat them. And they are the poisonous ones. So the only way you can stay away from that evil is by knowing what it is. By knowing what color they are, what size they are. So when you come across them in the forest, you'll know these ones, stay away from them. That's what Hudayfa radiallahu anhu said. I used to ask the Prophet ﷺ about the evil things to make sure then I could stay away from them. To know about what shirk is and the types of shirk, so I can stay away from it. To know what bid'ah is, so I can stay away from it when I see it. Without knowing the evils, you may unknowingly, unwittingly end up into them and you don't even know it's from the evils. So here, this book, it's going to be telling us about the evils, the evil deeds that you need to make sure you stay away from. Because these aren't just bad deeds and major sins. These are bad actions that if you do them, you become a kafir. So it's very important to know what they are, so that you make sure you stay well away from any of those types of actions. That's the importance of studying something like this. So, the reason why we study this book, من أجل المحافظة على الدين لا ينتقض فإن حفظ الدين من الضروريات التي اتفقت الشرائع السماوية على حفظها. So we study a book like this in order to make sure that we can preserve our religion. We can guard and keep safe our religion and not fall into those prohibited acts that would nullify our religion. Al-Imam al-Shatibi, rahimahullah, one of the scholars of the past, he said, اتفقت الأمة بل سائر الملل على أن الشريعة وضعت للمحافظة على الضروريات الخمس. That the scholars and all the nations are agreed that this Sharia, this religion has come to preserve 5 things of yours. To preserve 5 things. And ad-deen, your religion itself. An-nafs, the life of a person. It is haram to take the life of another. Preserve life. Wal-nasl, the lineage. Wal-mal, the wealth. Wal-aqal, your intellect. وَعِلْمُهَا عِنْدَ الْأُمَّةِ كَالضُّرُورِ. And this is something known by all of the ummah by necessity. And that's why they also say in the poetry, عَرَفْتُ الشَّرَّ لَا لِلشَّرِّ لَكِنْ لِتَوَقِّهِ وَمَنْ لَا يَعْرِفُ الشَّرِّ مِنَ النَّاسِ يَقَعُ فِيهِ. In this poetry they say, I learnt about the evil not for the sake of the evil. I learnt about the evil not for the sake of the evil, but for the sake of being able to save myself and keep away from it then. And whomsoever does not know about what evil is, will end up falling into it. Will end up falling into it otherwise. And similarly they say, وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَمَيَّزُ الْأَشْيَاءِ. By knowing about these types of shirk, it will clarify to you Tawheed even more. It will clarify to you Tawheed even more by knowing these affairs of shirk. Because they say by knowing the opposite of something, then that thing becomes clearer. Like if somebody says to you, fire. Fire. And they want to know what is fire. Somebody doesn't know what fire is. You want to try and explain to them what fire is and the heat of the fire. So you say to them, do you know what ice is? They say, yes, I know what ice is. You say to them, how does ice feel? They say, it feels freezing cold. You say to them, fire is the opposite of that. So now that person, imagine he didn't know what fire is. By giving that example to him, he will now have an idea of what fire is. Because he knows what ice is and he knows that's cold and freezing. You tell him fire is something opposite to that. So now, imagine he doesn't know what fire is, he'll have an idea. He'll think, okay, it's something which is hot, opposite to this cold. So, by giving the opposite of something, it can sometimes help you to understand what you're describing. By giving the opposite of something, it can help to describe what you want to try and describe. So here, by learning these acts of shirk, it will help you to understand better what Tawheed is and the reality of Tawheed is. Also, another reason why it's important to learn this, إذا علمت ما يقع بالكفر وما لا يقع به جنبت نفسك من الوقوع في تكفير المسلم واستباحة دمه. If you learn what these actions are that make a person a disbeliever, and so you understand exactly what it is that makes a person a disbeliever and what does not, then you will be careful and you will have an understanding of who is considered kafir and who is not. Because what is one of the biggest problems you have amongst people these days, amongst these Muslims who don't have much understanding of the religion? They declare everybody to be infidels. And everybody is a disbeliever. And everybody, you must go and kill them. Because of their foolishness, and they don't understand. They don't understand what Islam is and what makes you a Muslim and what doesn't make you a Muslim. So now by studying this book, you will have a better idea. And you will realize the foolishness of these people who declare everybody to be infidels and non-Muslims and apostates. And they say you can kill them and you can take their money and do whatever. Foolishness from them. So we'll learn the reality of these affairs too. Similarly, أن العلم بذلك باب من أبواب الدين، فكما تحتاج أن تتعلم أحكام الصلاة لإقامة الدين، تحتاج إلى أن تتعلم أحكام الكفر لكي تضبط باب الإيمان وتحقق أحكام الردة. وهذه الأهمية تتعلق بطلاب العلم الشرعي، فالعلم بنواقض الإسلام علم بباب من أبواب الشرع وباب من أبواب الدين، لا بد لطالب العلم أن يضبطه كغيره من أبواب العلم ومن أبواب الدين. Learning about these things that nullify your Islam, these types of shirk and these types of actions, is important just like it is learning about the prayer. And we've just been learning about the prayer the last 5 months. Learning about these issues is as important as those types of things. It is just another science of the religion you need to know about. So you need to learn about the prayer, how to pray, no doubt. Similarly, you need to learn about these nullifiers of Islam in order to preserve your religion and to preserve yourself upon Tawheed. So it is another chapter of knowledge that you need to gain. Also, with regards to this particular type of knowledge, it is important to learn it due to the danger of it. The danger of it. And that is خطورة هذا الباب، وذلك عندما يقرأ المسلم في هذا الباب وينظر إلى مسائله يرى كيف أن الإنسان من الممكن بكلمة واحدة يخرج من الإسلام. When you study these things, you will realize that sometimes a person could exit from Islam with a word he utters. A statement that he makes could be enough to exit him from Islam. And we'll come across and look at this in detail. And it could be one action that he does that exits him from Islam. It could be one point of aqeedah he believes in that exits him from Islam. So these things are very severe in their nature. And they are very dangerous. So we need to have a good understanding of these affairs of Tawheed and Shirk and these affairs that exit you from Islam, and to know the principles of them properly in order that you be upon understanding. عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إن العبد ليتكلم بالكلمة من رضوان الله لا يلقي لها بالا يرفعه الله بها درجات، وإن العبد ليتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله لا يلقي لها بالا يهوي بها في جهنم. That maybe sometimes a servant may say one speech of goodness that pleases Allah, and because of that Allah raises him in rank in paradise. And at the same time you may say one statement of evil and you do not even give it any attention, but because of that Allah may cast you into the fire. One statement you make may be a statement of kufr. It may be a statement of shirk. So it is important to know this. The first thing we need to examine and look at here is some principles. Some principles in understanding when a person is Muslim, when a person exits from Islam, because there are certain principles that are important to understand before we move into the main subject. Firstly, to declare somebody a kafir is the right of Allah and His Messenger. Not for anybody, any of you to go along and say he's a kafir, that ruler's a kafir, this one's a kafir. The right of declaring kufr upon someone is for Allah and the Messenger. التكفير حق لله تعالى ولرسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا يجوز التقدم بين يدي الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم فلا يطلق التكفير في مسألة أو على معين إلا بدليل من الكتاب والسنة. What does it mean that declaring kufr declaring somebody to be a non-Muslim, even though he claims to be Muslim. You declare him your non-Muslim. How? That is not for you. That is for Allah and the Messenger. Meaning what? Meaning rulings of declaring somebody to be a kafir must be established upon rulings of the Quran and the Sunnah, upon evidences and principles from the Quran and the Sunnah. Not willy-nilly as they say. Anybody comes along, he's kafir, that rule is a kafir, this rule is a kafir. Rather, it requires clear understanding from the Quran and the Sunnah with evidences of when a person is declared as a disbeliever, or when a particular action can be termed as a nullifier of Islam generally. فَلَا يُكَفِّرْ بِمَعْصِيَةٍ أو يكفر بمعصية ولا بذنب. So you don't just make takfir of someone, meaning declare them as non-Muslim, because of a sin they do. Just sinning, as bad as it may be, and you may be punished in the hellfire for it, just sinning alone in of itself doesn't necessitate or make somebody a kafir. ولا بمجرد بغض أو كراهية أو لشهوة أو لشبهة لا بد من دليل شرعي وحجة وبرهان لأن من كفر مسلما فقد كفر. It's very important to have clear evidences in these issues. Very clear evidences in these issues. Because if you declare someone to be a kafir incorrectly, then you are the one who's a disbeliever. Returns back to you. So you need to be extremely careful in this issue of declaring somebody to be a disbeliever. That's why the Shaykh is mentioning all of this now as an introduction before we get into those 10 actions. Because otherwise you may see somebody doing something loosely resembling those actions and you say the kafir. You have to be very careful. So the first thing is you must know the rulings carefully. Quran, Sunnah, evidences before you can say an action is an action of kufr, or that a particular person is a kafir. It's a very dangerous issue. Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا قَالَ الرَّجُلُ لِأَخِيهِ يَا كَافِرْ فَقَدْ بَاءَ بِهِ أَحَدُهُمَا. If a person says to his brother, you're a kafir, then that will come back to one of them. If he's lied and he's not told the truth upon him, it returns back upon him that statement of kafir. So it's very dangerous and very severe, and a person needs to be careful with this. In another narration it mentions hadith of Abdullah ibn Dinar that he heard Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma say, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أيما امرئ قال لأخيه يا كافر فقد باء بها أحدهما إن كان كما قال وإلا رجعت عليه. If you declare someone kafir, you say you're a kafir. If it's accurate upon evidence, Quran, Sunnah, okay. If not, then it will return back upon yourself. So it's a very severe issue. And you can already start to see how foolish it is, the people out there. The Khawarij and their likes declaring everybody to be kafir. This country, all of it kafir, that ruler kafir. You have to have evidences and clear understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah when speaking of these affairs. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, وَبَعْضُ الْمُبْتَدِعَةِ يَكُونُ فِيهِ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ مَا لَيْسَ فِي بَعْضٍ. Some of the innovators may have some iman in them which is not like others. فَلَيْسَ لِأَحَدٍ أَنْ يُكَفِّرَ أَحَدًا مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَإِنْ أَخْطَأَ وَغَلِطَ حَتَّى تُقَامَ عَلَيْهِ الْحُجَّةِ وَتُبَيَّنْ لَهُ الْمَحَجَّةِ. It's not allowed for anybody to just declare another Muslim as a disbeliever until, even if they've made an error or they've done some wrong, you can't just declare them a kafir until the evidence is established and it's explained and that detail is given. Those things need to be looked at. وَمَنْ ثَبَتَ إِيمَانُهُ بِيَقِينٍ لَمْ يَزُلْ ذَلِكَ عَنْهُ بِالشَّكِّ بَلْ لَا يَزُولُ إِلَّا بَعْدَ إِقَامَةِ الْحُجَّةِ وَإِزَالَةِ الشُّبْهَةِ. And somebody whom it is established that they are Muslim, that is known that they are Muslim, you cannot declare them as a non-Muslim upon a doubt that they were doing something or they were saying something kafir. You can't just declare a known Muslim to be a kafir upon half-half type of words. Got to be upon evidence and proof. And you've established the evidence and the proof. Can't just be half-half like this. A person who is Muslim is Muslim. You cannot exit him and declare him non-Muslim just like that, half-half, with evidences that are just here and there. It's got to be something solidified, evidence, proof established upon him, and anything, doubts removed from him. So it's a very important and precise topic, this. Not for anybody to go around declaring anyone a kafir. So that's the first thing. Declaring somebody a kafir must be strictly upon principle, evidence of Quran and Sunnah. Not for anybody willy-nilly. Secondly, kufr itself, this is the second principle now. Kufr itself is two types. Kufr itself is two types. Kufrun asghar wa kufrun akbar. Minor kufr, minor disbelief, and major kufr, major disbelief. Minor kufr, minor disbelief, does not exit you from the fold of Islam. Major kufr exits you from the fold of Islam. وقد جاء في أحاديث كثيرة وصف بعض الأعمال أنها كفر وقد يفعلها المسلم فتكون معصية كبيرة ولا يخرج بها من الملة. There are many examples in ahadith where it talks about certain types of sins, that if a person does them, they are kufr. But those examples, and there are a few examples in the Sunnah that mention if you do such and such, it is kufr. But we know that that action, doing it, doesn't make you a kafir out of Islam. It must therefore be talking about minor kufr. One of the examples of that, hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال له في حجة الوداع استنصت الناس فقال لا ترجعوا كفارا يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض. The Prophet ﷺ told them in the farewell Hajj, do not return as kuffar, killing one another or striking one another. And in another example, إذا قال الرجل لأخيه يا كافر فقد باء به أحدهما. If you say to your brother you're a kafir, it returns to one of the two. In another narration, اثنتان في الناس هما بهم كفر. Two types of actions, a person does them, it is kufr in him. الطعن في النسب, abuse and criticism of a person's lineage, والنياحة على الميت, and screaming and shouting upon the dead person. These types of examples, screaming and shouting upon the dead person, everybody knows these examples well. Somebody dies and you have the people screaming and shouting and why and this and that. That is, in this hadith it says kufr. Two types of things, people do them, they are kufr, the hadith says. One of them, النياحة على الميت, screaming and shouting when someone dies. Says it's kufr. Screaming and shouting is kufr when someone dies. Does it make that person a kafir then? Kafir now? You see the women doing it and even the men doing it sometimes. Is that person a kafir when that happens? Hadith says it is kufr. It's minor kufr. You wouldn't say, especially you see it so often happening. Somebody dies, and especially the women and perhaps some of the men screaming and shouting and they've lost their senses. If we said that this hadith says it is kufr, meaning you're kafir now, then that's it. In the janazah, half of the family will become kuffar. Big problem. So now you know these narrations, when it says kufr, it is two types. Major kufr makes you kafir, but there is the other type which is minor kufr. It is a type of kufr, but not to make you kafir. In another narration, مَنْ حَلَفَ بِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ أَشْرَكَ. Whoever takes an oath by other than Allah has committed shirk. Again, that would not necessitate you are kafir, but it would be a type of minor kufr. So these are all examples where kufr is mentioned in the narrations, but it doesn't necessitate major kufr, i.e. that you are kuffar out of Islam. So that is important to understand. Many people don't understand that. They see these narrations, they say, look, it says kufr. If you do this kufr, i.e. you're a kafir, that's it, finished. No, not necessarily. There is major kufr and there is minor kufr. So these principles need to be understood. In some of the other narrations, sometimes you see hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that if you do X, Y, and Z, then you are not a mu'min. If you're not a mu'min, that means you're a kafir. Opposite of mu'min is kafir. So there are some narrations where you see this. The Prophet ﷺ says, whomsoever does X, Y, and Z is not a mu'min. Example, one of the famous examples, hadith everybody has heard of, hadith of Anas عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you believes, none of you has iman. If you don't have iman, that means you have, what have you got? Kufr. Hadith says, none of you has iman until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So if you did not love for your brother what you love for yourself, the hadith says you do not have iman. Does that equals now, therefore you are a kafir? You don't love for your brother what you love for yourself. You desire the good things, you're glad you got them, and you wish your brother doesn't get them. You don't like him. Kafir now you? No. Because again, these types of narrations, when it says that person doesn't have iman, who doesn't love for his brother what he doesn't love for himself, doesn't mean that it is now kufr out of Islam. It just means that your iman is deficient and not proper. Your iman isn't complete. Your iman isn't right. If you're not loving for your brother what you love for yourself, doesn't mean your iman is out, kafir, out of Islam. So it's very important to understand these narrations carefully. In some of the narrations, so far we've seen two types. Narrations where it says, such and such, whoever does this has fallen into kufr. Like the one who screams and shouts when somebody dies, fallen into kufr. But we know these types of examples, there are some narrations like that, and they only indicate the minor kufr, not kafir out of Islam. There are other narrations that say there is no iman for the person who doesn't do X, Y, and Z, like the one who does not love for his brother what he loves for himself. We know that one doesn't mean that you are now kafir, major kufr. Doesn't mean your iman is all gone. Just means it's deficient and not complete and not right. Then there's another type, third type, narrations where the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever does X, Y, and Z, then he has the characteristics of nifaq in him. Hypocrisy. The hypocrites, are they Muslims or not? The hypocrites at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Kuffar. Hypocrites at the time of the Prophet ﷺ were kuffar. The hypocrites of nifaq al-i'tiqadi. In their hearts they didn't believe, outside they were pretending to be Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ said in some hadith, whoever has certain characteristics in them, they are characteristics of those hypocrites. And those hypocrites were kuffar. So therefore this would mean that you are kuffar. But again, it doesn't mean that you are kuffar out of Islam. It just means you've got certain characteristics of those hypocrites. Evil characteristics that are making deficiency in you. But not that you're kafir out of Islam. Example of that, again a famous hadith many of you will have heard of, about the characteristics of the munafiq. That a person who إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ. When a person speaks, the Prophet ﷺ said, a person who speaks and lies every time he speaks. That is a characteristic of those kuffar hypocrites. Does that mean because you've got that characteristic you're a kafir out of Islam? No. But it means you're upon a serious sin with deficiency in you now. Also, وَإِذَا عَاهَدَ غَدَرَ, gives a promise but then breaks that promise. وَإِذَا اؤْتُمِنَ خَانَ, somebody trusts you with something and you betray them. Those are characteristics of hypocrites. Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has these characteristics, then he is كَانَ مُنَافِقًا خَالِصًا. He is a pure munafiq. Pure munafiq equals kafir. But again, you need to understand very carefully that the narration does not mean that you are out of Islam. All of this is talking about minor kufr that we said at the beginning. A fourth type is when the Prophet ﷺ sometimes in some narration says, whoever does X, Y, and Z, then he's not got anything to do with us. If you got nothing to do with us, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, then you must be one of the kuffar. Again, that narration would apparently indicate kufr. Whoever does X, Y, and Z, he is not from us. Who are us? The Prophet ﷺ, when he's saying that, he is not from us. The us he's talking about is the Muslims. He is not from us, then who is he from? Kuffar. So like there's an example, مَنْ غَشَّنَا فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا. Whoever deceives, deception, he is not from us. So a person who deceives others, deceives them, cheats them, the Prophet ﷺ said he is not from us. He is not from the Muslims. Meaning you are now kafir, outside of Islam? No, because again it is talking about minor kufr. Somebody who cheats and deceives in their business, in their trade, tricks people into buying things that are faulty, etc. Haram, big sin, deficiency. But nobody's going to say, oh, that's kafir now. If you cheated someone, you're kafir. It's not like that. So these are all examples that whomsoever does these things, he cannot be considered a proper, full mu'min. He can't be. Whoever does those types of things mentioned in all of those examples, that this person is in a characteristic of kufr. This person has not got iman. This person has got characteristics of hypocrisy. All those types of examples given, this person is not from us. All of those types of phrases are being used to indicate that whoever does those actions is not a complete mu'min. Deficient. Has big errors in him. He is not a complete mu'min. He deserves, or he is not deserving of being called a complete mu'min. Rather, he is a mu'min fasiq. He's a believer, but he's a fasiq, a sinner. He is a sinner and a believer. He is a believer with weakness in his iman, deficiency in his iman. فليس هو من المؤمنين المحمودين الموعودين بالجنة ابتداء بل هو من أهل الوعيد. Those types of people in all of these narrations, they are mu'min. At the end of the day, they haven't exited from the fold of Islam. But they aren't the high level mu'mineen, who Allah talks about being in paradise and getting the rewards. Those people who do these actions, who have committed, you could say, the minor kufr, they are under the threat of Allah. Those actions, you could end up in the hellfire and be punished for them. And in the end, you'll be taken out. So, a person who commits them is upon severe danger, severe threat. But the point to understand here is, when you see these types of narrations, it doesn't equal automatically that anybody who does that is kafir, out of Islam. And that's something many people don't understand. You see a hadith like this, you read it, whoever does X, Y, and Z, then he has kufr in him. You're going to think naturally it means he's a kafir if you do that. He's not a Muslim then. Or the one who does X, Y, and Z, he is not from us. He's not from the Muslims. Where's he from then? Kafir. But you have to understand this carefully, that the principles here, major kufr, minor kufr. That is something these Khawaris, Takfiris, Hizb ut-Tahrir, all these kinds of guys, Anjam Chowdhury and all of his people, those individuals, the foolish ones, They don't understand these types of principles. They read any hadith that says whoever does this, that, the other, kufr, that's it. That ruler was doing this, he's a kafir then. They haven't understood the principles of major kufr, minor kufr, nothing. So that is one of the first important things to understand. Then, we need to understand therefore, what does this show us? It shows us that when you do sins, all of these things were examples of sins, it shows us that it definitely impacts your iman. Doing those types of sins impacts your iman greatly, and therefore makes you deficient in your iman. But not to the extent you can automatically say that all of your iman has gone, and that's what it means to say he's kafir. That his iman has gone. You're saying all of his iman is gone. So that is not the way. So المعاصي والذنوب لا تزيل إيمانا ولا توجب كفرا ولكنها إنما تنفي من الإيمان حقيقته وإخلاصه الذي نعت الله به أهله واشترطه عليهم في مواضع من كتابه. So those types of people are therefore deficient in their iman. They have weakness in their iman. They are great sinners. They may be punished in the hell, but it doesn't always necessarily equals kafir out of Islam. So that's the first important introduction going into this book. When we talk about these 10 actions that are actions of kufr and they lead a person out of Islam, that doesn't mean now you automatically just start thinking everybody kafir, kafir, kafir. These things you have to look at with principles and understanding, with evidences, establishing the evidences upon the people. So that is the introduction we'll begin with then. Praise the 8th, no? So we'll have to conclude there for today with that small introduction. We'll carry on next week with some more principles and some more points, with some more introduction yet, until we get to those 10 actual actions that would dictate a person is out of the fold of Islam if you did them. So we'll carry on next week. Isha next week? Isha next week, what time is it going to be? Alright. So inshallah for now, let's just say 7 p.m. 7 p.m. let's call it for now. If there's any change, just keep following the Sabil Twitter account and the text message group if there's any change. But we'll call it 7 p.m. next week again for now, inshallah. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.